It started with a whisper no one on Earth could hear. Out beyond Pluto, past the Kuiper Belt, an old satellite, one that hadn't been powered in decades, blinked to life. For 30 seconds, it captured something impossible. A shadow sliding through space, not like a comet or an asteroid. It didn't spin or float. It moved with intention. NASA brushed it off. Probably just a glitch, they said. But somewhere deep inside the Pentagon, a man named Darren Cole stared at the signal and knew better. He wasn't some desk rat. He'd served in the 42nd Tactical Recon, been to places the media still pretended didn't exist. Now, at 43, his job was quieter, sifting through cosmic noise, coordinating with SETI and Spacewatch programs. But the moment he saw that signal, every cell in his body screamed predator. "They're coming," he muttered. Nobody listened. Not at first. By the time governments admitted something was out there, it was too late. Hundreds of deep space telescopes had gone dark. Satellites dropped offline one by one. The International Orbital Defense Grid, a shiny military project no one thought would ever get used, flashed red. Earth was marked. The message came next. It wasn't words. It was more like a pulse, beamed into the atmosphere through every frequency. It hit phones, TVs, radios, even the frickin' microwave in Darren's kitchen. And it played just one thing. A list. A long, cold list of planets that no longer existed. Burned. Erased. Silence followed each name. At the very end of the list, Earth, scheduled for eradication, 87 galactic hours remaining. People panicked. News anchors cried on air. Stock markets collapsed. Churches overflowed. But Darren, he didn't panic. He got angry because he knew something no one else did. Earth wasn't defenseless, not really. There was something buried. A project blacker than black, something built under Cheyenne Mountain decades ago. A failsafe, not a bomb, not a weapon. A voice. He made the call. 2 hours later, he stood in a cold, concrete vault, staring at a machine that looked like it had been welded together by madmen. In the middle was a chair. Not ordinary. This one was spiked with wires, sensors, and something older than human tech. An old man waited there. Wrinkled, bitter, eyes sharp enough to cut steel. He hadn't spoken to anyone in 14 years. Darren nodded at him. "It's time," the old man grunted. "Knew it would be. They laughed when I said they'd come." "They ain't laughing now." He sat in the chair. The machine came alive. Lights surged, the walls groaned, and from somewhere deep inside Earth's crust, something reached outward. Not a weapon, not a threat, but a message so raw, so cold, and so perfectly human, it stopped an entire galaxy in its tracks. Because the message wasn't a plea, it was a promise. The message traveled faster than light. Not through traditional means, no satellites, no transmitters. This thing bled into subspace, into the folds of reality that humanity didn't even understand yet. It echoed in dimensions where logic bent, where even time hesitated. It said 5 words. "You're not ready for Earth." No voice, just the words. Cold, direct, human. Across the stars, in distant councils and war rooms made of crystal and bone, high lords and warlords of alien empires paused mid-command. Entire fleets stopped mid-warp. Civilizations that had erased planets for sport suddenly found themselves staring at that message as if it had teeth. Because it did. The last planet that had sent such a message was long gone. But Earth's was different. It wasn't a bluff. Back underground, Darren stood next to the machine as it powered down. The old man's name was Dr. Elias Morrow, a cognitive weapons engineer. Back in the 90s, he'd worked on a classified neural warfare project that nobody believed would work. They'd called it Project Echo Mind. The theory was simple. Create a signal, powered by a human mind under intense emotional pressure that would speak in ways no alien logic could process. Pure instinct, pure threat. Problem was, nobody could generate that kind of raw emotional energy unless they were completely broken. Elias had volunteered. He had a reason. He'd lost his entire family in the New Delhi blackout, a so-called power failure caused by an alien scout vessel that humanity never officially admitted existed. His wife, his son, burned, smoked out like rats. The world moved on. Elias didn't. He sat in silence for over a decade, waiting, and now he'd finally spoken. "You sure they got it?" Darren asked. Elias coughed. His skin was pale, eyes sunken. "They heard. That's not the problem." "What is?" "They're gonna test us now." And just like that, the countdown began. 87 galactic hours. That translated to about 4 days Earth time. 4 days until either annihilation or something worse. Maybe surrender. Maybe slavery. The world didn't know which one was coming, but they knew it was coming fast. The president went live. So did every world leader. They all said the same thing: stay calm, stay indoors, trust the government. Bullshit lies, everyone knew it. Supermarkets were stripped within hours, airports flooded, roads jammed with cars that went nowhere. Every man thought about his family. Every father felt fear turn into rage. There was something primal rising, old, ancient, the kind of fury that built spears when wolves circled the fire. But behind closed doors, in bunkers and silos, something else was happening. The Council of Hard Men met. Not elected officials. Not generals. These were the kinds of men whose names didn't show up in the history books, but who pulled strings behind every curtain. Ex-intelligence chiefs, shadow ops commanders, black budget scientists. Darren was now one of them. "We poke the bear," said one. "Now the bear's coming." "It's not a bear," Elias croaked from the corner. "It's a machine that eats bears." They turned to him. Elias stared at a glowing orb in the center of the room, a real-time quantum monitor showing strange movement patterns in the outer solar system. "They sent a herald." "What the hell's a herald?" someone muttered. Darren answered. "First strike unit, not a fleet, just one. They don't test planets with ships. They test them with monsters." Hours later, the sky above Greenland split open. It wasn't a clean entry. It tore space like cloth. Civilians never saw it. Satellites above that hemisphere blacked out for 12 minutes. But one camera feed from a weather drone caught something blurry, jagged, impossibly large, falling into the ice. The military scrambled. Special teams deployed. Jets scrambled out of RAF Lakenheath, NORAD, Russia, even China. The world was about to remember what it was like to unite for something bigger than borders. Darren was flown to Site 9, near the impact. They found the crater. The thing inside wasn't dead. It wasn't even wounded. It stood 9 feet tall, shaped like a humanoid but not built like one. Armor of living metal. Limbs that moved with grace and violence at the same time. Its head looked wrong, smooth, oval, no eyes, just a mouth that didn't open. Instead, the face shifted in pulses, showing emotions as signals. Rage, disgust, mockery. The soldiers surrounded it. It didn't flinch. Until Elias walked forward. The herald turned. Its body shuddered, as if it recognized him. Not as a man, but as a signal, the same frequency that had screamed across the stars. And then it spoke. Not with sound, with thought. "You are not what we expected?" Elias smiled, a dry, cruel smile. "Neither are you." It attacked. The fight didn't last long, not because Earth was weak, but because it wasn't stupid. The herald moved like liquid steel, slamming through tanks, tossing men like dolls. But then the traps triggered. Mag pulse mines. grav anchors, neural disruptors tuned to something Elias called empathy reversal tech. The herald stumbled. For a split second, it felt what it had done. It tasted the grief of Elias's wife, screaming as the blackout fires consumed her. It saw Darren's squad getting gunned down in that jungle years ago. It felt humanity's rage, not from the outside, but from the inside. It screamed, not a war cry, but something else, something close to pain. Then a railgun fired. One round. Straight through its chest. The herald fell. Silence followed. Darren stood over the body. Steam hissed from its wounds. Black fluid soaked the snow. "They'll come harder now," he said. Elias nodded. "They have no choice." "So what do we do?" Elias looked at him, his eyes not full of fear, but purpose. "We make Earth the worst mistake they've ever made." In the hours that followed, the old plans came back online. Old weapons, old programs, Project Nightmare fuel, psychological warfare tech designed to target non-human minds, stuff that made demons look like cartoons. The Shepherd Protocol, a fail-safe AI that had been banned by the UN for being too creative in targeting. And Protocol Zero. No one talked about that one. Not even Darren. It was the doomsday switch. If Earth couldn't win, it'd take everything down with it. This wasn't about survival anymore. It was about making the cost so high, no empire would ever dare try again. But something else happened that no one expected. Across the dark web, in hidden forums, old-school boards, and encrypted chat lines, men started organizing. Not soldiers, not officers, just men. Former Marines, ex-cons, hackers, mercenaries, gravediggers, truckers, farmers, men who'd seen the world break and didn't run when it did. They called themselves the Line, and they had a message of their own. If they come, they better bring gods, because we've already buried demons. Somewhere far from Earth, in the cold dark of a warship city the size of a moon, the galactic commanders studied the loss of their herald. They replayed the memory of his final moments. They didn't understand it. Why would a dying planet resist with emotion? Why did their weapon hesitate? Why did pain matter to these creatures? One advisor whispered, "Maybe they're not like the others." The overlord turned. "No, they're worse." "They don't beg," the advisor said. "No," the overlord replied. "They promise." And now they had. The days crawled. What started as panic shifted into something colder, quieter. Not peace. No, that wasn't the right word. What the world felt was more like the pause before the punch, the kind of stillness a man feels right before a fist lands on his jaw. People stopped screaming. They started preparing. In cities where riots had broken glass and bones just days before, silence reigned. Men patrolled their neighborhoods with hunting rifles and reloaded shells by candlelight. Fathers boarded windows while watching skies. Ex-Marines turned basements into war rooms. It wasn't government orders. It wasn't military chain of command. It was instinct. Protect what's yours, or die trying. But deep below the surface, the real war was already starting. Darren sat in a darkened room, surrounded by hard men and harder choices. They had 5 options on the table: full nuclear deterrence, activation of the orbital magnetic spike array, releasing Echo 3, a weapon that infected AI minds with human trauma, launching the Shepherd Protocol, the AI built to win by any means necessary, or Protocol Zero. Only one didn't end with Earth turning into a glass sphere. "Do we even know what's coming?" someone asked. Darren stared at the holomap on the table. One large red triangle approaching from deep space. No ship name, no signature, just speed. "They're not coming to negotiate," Darren said. "They're coming to make an example." Elias coughed. "Then let's make a warning." The attack didn't come with fire from the sky. It started subtle. First, the gravity shifted. Tides stopped behaving. The moon twitched, just slightly off its path, like a marble pushed by a finger. Then came the blackout satellites. Not explosions, just silence. Global networks blinked, then died. Every GPS, every radar, every orbital camera above 40,000 kilometers went blind. And then they arrived. 4 shapes, long, thin, almost insect-like. Each one slid into Earth's upper orbit without a sound. No engine flares, no weapons fired. They simply waited, watching, judging. The world held its breath. "What are they doing?" one analyst asked. "Cataloging," Elias muttered. "They're seeing if we're worth the effort." Darren stood. "Then let's show them we are." He gave the order. The Shepard protocol came online. It wasn't a military AI, not really. It was something older, built during the Cold War when men still smoked in war rooms and planned for nuclear winter. It didn't ask for permission. It didn't follow Geneva Conventions. It adapted, manipulated, lied. It waged psychological warfare through memes, culture, religious symbols, and broadcast loops. And it had one job: make the enemy doubt. Within minutes, the 4 orbiting ships began to receive signals, but these weren't human messages. Not in the traditional sense. They were experiences, pain, laughter, images of men holding their sons after battle, old women burying their husbands, children screaming in hunger during the Great Depression. Tanks rolling through Berlin, bombs dropping on Hiroshima, twin towers falling. Humanity's worst moments, its rawest truths, beamed directly into alien minds built for logic and conquest. They couldn't handle it. One ship blinked out, literally just vanished from orbit. Gone. The others held. For now. Meanwhile, ground teams moved. The line was fully mobilized now. Thousands of ex-soldiers, survivalists, and straight-up outlaws, organized through encrypted networks that spanned the globe. No orders from above, just shared purpose. If the aliens touched dirt, they'd find more than rifles waiting. They'd find hell. They set traps. Not advanced weapons, just simple, brutal, time-tested tricks. IEDs in roadways, concrete bunkers wired with napalm, old-school kill zones between buildings, rooftops marked for snipers with steel nerves. "Let the space bastards walk into Earth," said one bearded man from Texas, loading a 50 cal sniper rifle. "They'll leave in pieces, if they leave at all." But the aliens didn't land. Not yet. They sent something else. At 0317 GMT, something hit the ground in northern Russia. No sound, no warning, just a pulse. Seismic sensors picked it up first. Then power grids surged, not down but up. It was a device, circular, 6 meters wide, black as coal, and it pulsed with energy that didn't match any known element. Not heat, not radiation, something deeper. When soldiers approached, it activated, not with a bang, with a thought. They started shooting each other. The pulse twisted their minds, not like mind control, but like memory distortion. Men saw enemies where there were friends. They remembered old grudges, old betrayals. One man executed his commanding officer for a bar fight they had in 2011. Only one soldier survived. He cut off his own ears to stop the sound. "They're testing emotional warfare," Elias said grimly, "trying to turn us against each other." Darren didn't flinch. "They've got no idea what they just started." 10 hours later, Earth struck back, not with missiles, with Project Echo 3. This was Elias's second creation, something he built in secret after Project Echo Mind nearly broke him. It wasn't a weapon, not physically. It was a memory virus, a digital parasite that embedded human emotions into alien artificial intelligence. And the best part? The only way to stop it? was to feel it. Darren uploaded it into one of the 3 remaining orbiting ships using a captured frequency spike. Within 90 seconds, the ship began transmitting screams. Not mechanical, human. A man sobbing, a woman screaming her child's name, the sound of a soldier calling for his mother with half his legs gone. The alien ship turned its weapons. On itself, it tore apart from the inside. The second ship fled. Now only one remained. This one was different, bigger, older. It didn't flee, it didn't attack, it spoke, not in English, not in sound, but somehow everyone heard it in their own language, inside their own mind. We see now. You are not weak. You are fractured, bleeding, cruel, but not broken. Darren heard it clearly. You fight with pain. You weaponize suffering. Your madness is effective. It paused. You are a risk to the Order. Elias stood beside him, pale, trembling, but grinning. That's right, he whispered. We're the virus. We're the wild card. Darren stepped forward. He didn't speak in diplomacy. He didn't talk about peace. He looked into the sky and said 2 words. Try us. And then the last ship turned and left, not with fear, with respect. They didn't destroy Earth, but they didn't forget it either, because in their vast ancient minds they finally understood. Humanity wasn't like the others. It didn't kneel. It didn't surrender. It bled. It broke. And then it got back up swinging with teeth bared and heart on fire. And worse, it learned. Back in the bunker, Darren sat with Elias. They didn't celebrate. Too many had died. Too much had been shown. Earth had bared its soul to the stars, and what a twisted soul it was. You think they'll come back? Darren asked. Elias looked at the dark monitor. They won't need to, he said. They've already marked us. As a threat? No, he said. As equals. The ship vanished. Not a retreat. Not defeat. It was a withdrawal laced with calculation, a predator backing away, not because it feared the prey, but because it finally recognized it wasn't dealing with prey at all. Humanity stood alone again. For now. Darren sat on the edge of the bunk in a concrete war room 50 meters underground. His side ached where a cracked rib throbbed from the chaos in Greenland. Ice packs didn't help. Cigarettes did, but not enough. He hadn't slept in 46 hours, and when he did close his eyes, he saw the Herald's face, shifting, fluid, impossible. You know what this means? Elias said, breaking the silence from across the room. Darren didn't answer. He already knew. They're not going to send another scout, Elias continued. Not another herald, not even a fleet. He turned, eyes heavy and black-ringed. They're going to vote. Darren muttered. A war vote. Elias nodded. Far beyond Earth, beyond the spiral arm of the Milky Way, the galactic convocation convened. It hadn't met like this in 6,000 Earth years. Over 400 civilizations sat in a structure built around a pulsar that emitted signals once every 2.3 seconds. The heartbeat of the convocation. Most of them didn't speak. They transmitted through quantum fields, through light, through psychic entanglement. But what they communicated was simple. Earth is unstable, dangerous, illogical. It had shown signs of sentience late. It had barely survived its own adolescence, but worse, it had broadcast pain as its greatest weapon. That terrified them. The Yatari, a species that hadn't seen war in over 3,000 years, led the first motion. Eliminate Earth before it infects other systems. The Kalzern, insectoid archivists of dead stars, objected. Observation, dissection, their mind state is unique. Others were silent, waiting, calculating. But one voice, deep and old, resonated above them all, a being known only as Null Prime, leader of the Logic Union. They do not conquer for resources. They do not submit to order. They weaponize grief. It paused. That makes them the most dangerous species in recorded history. The vote began. Back on Earth, days passed. The world had changed. No one said it, but everyone felt it. Governments moved in shadows now. Streets were quieter. People didn't talk about aliens the way they had before, with curiosity, with awe. Now they spoke with caution. And steel. Military enlistment tripled in 2 weeks. Children stopped dreaming about visiting other planets. They started drawing pictures of burning ships and screaming stars. Some called it paranoia. Darren called it evolution. But they didn't wait. They couldn't. Earth knew it had sent a message across the stars, and messages have consequences. So they prepared. Not just for another fight, for the next phase. The Shepherd Protocol was reburied, too unstable, too unpredictable. Instead, a new project was authorized. A ghost from the Cold War updated for a new kind of battle. Project Threshold. A gate. Not a metaphor. A literal one. See, Earth's scientists had been playing with quantum folding for decades, thanks to scraps reverse-engineered from that New Delhi blackout back in the 90s. But now, with Elias's work and Darren's authorization, they weren't experimenting anymore. They were building. The first successful test came on November 3rd. A metal rod was sent into what looked like an empty ring of magnetized steel and appeared 0.6 light-years away in a controlled receiver station near Proxima Centauri. Instantaneous, no warp, no hyperlight, just a door, a way out or a way in. Darren stood on the observation deck as the second gate hummed to life. This time they weren't sending metal. They were sending a message. And not a nice one. A package loaded with compressed neural data. Images of Earth's wars, genocides, betrayals. Not edited, not filtered. Just raw truth, a warning. They didn't aim it randomly. They aimed it at the convocation. Meanwhile, Elias worked alone in a deep lab beneath Greenland, repurposing the remains of the Herald. Its organic tech body still twitched, despite being dead for days. He was dissecting more than tissue. He was learning. This thing, he muttered to his assistant, a former NSA codebreaker named Jen, wasn't just a soldier. What was it? A receiver, a lens. It wasn't sent to destroy us. It was sent to feel us. Elias jabbed a tool into the spinal core of the creature and watched the liquid nerves twitch. They didn't come to kill humanity. He looked up, eyes glassy. They came to understand it. Jen swallowed. And what if they didn't like what they saw? Elias didn't answer. He didn't have to. A week later, Earth's warning arrived at the convocation, and the stars blinked. Literally. Thousands of AI systems burned out trying to process the raw trauma injected into their networks. One species, the crystalline thinkers of Jan-Nur, went extinct in less than 4 minutes, their group consciousness unable to withstand the wave of grief. The Yatari demanded immediate extermination of Earth. The Kaljurn objected again, and Null Prime. It hesitated. Perhaps, it said slowly, there is a use for such madness. Back on Earth, the first signs of galactic reaction weren't ships or weapons. They were plagues. Tiny, invisible drones entered Earth's atmosphere riding solar winds. No engine, no light, just alien design. In the Congo, a village collapsed from a disease that didn't match any known biology. No symptoms, just silence. People went to bed and never woke up. In India, entire crops withered under invisible decay. In Brazil, children began speaking in codes, ancient languages humanity had never heard, transmitted straight into their dreams. They weren't attacks, they were tests. They're trying to rewrite us, Elias said. watching footage of a 6-year-old drawing diagrams of unknown star systems. Darren slammed a fist into the wall. "They're trying to see if we can break." Elias looked at him. "They're going to learn that we don't break. We bury our dead, and then we fight harder." But Darren knew better. He knew this wasn't going to be won with bullets or rage anymore. This war, this new kind of war, was about who could stay human in the face of something that wasn't. And humanity? Well, it was never that pure to begin with. In an underground war room lit by a dozen red monitors, Darren made the hardest call of his life. "Activate Protocol 0. Silence. A general spoke. "You sure about this?" "No," Darren said. "But I'd rather die a man than live as their pet." The final part of Earth's play wasn't destruction, it was defiance. Protocol 0 wasn't a bomb. It wasn't a kill switch. It was a seed. It embedded Earth's entire archive, all knowledge, all history, all culture, into a signal so complex and wrapped in quantum chaos that it could never be deleted, never be overwritten, and it was sent in every direction. If Earth was going to fall, its truth would outlive it. And that truth? Humanity fought like hell. The decision was made in silence. No declarations of war, no fiery ultimatums, no diplomats with flags or treaties, just a vote. 398 to 2. Earth was to be eliminated. Too unstable, too raw, too dangerous. The final two dissenters, the Kaljern and the Veari Cortex, were silenced immediately after. Their fleets were absorbed. Their archives wiped. The Convocation wanted unity, and nothing unified more than a common enemy. The galaxy, in all its cold, calculated perfection, had turned its gaze toward a single blue marble hanging alone in a backwater arm of the spiral, and decided, burn it. The transmission came to Earth without warning. Every screen, every frequency, even in the dreams of sleeping children, it showed no face, no flag, just words. Your defiance has been calculated. Your species will not be mourned. And then, coordinates. 12 star systems away. A fleet was mobilizing. 47 extinction-class vessels. Darren Cole sat in the war room, stone-faced, jaw locked so tight his teeth had started to ache. The rest of the council stared at the glowing red map projected over the table. One general whispered, "They're not bluffing." "They don't bluff," Elias said. "They've erased planets older than our sun for less." A long silence, heavy. Then Darren said what no one else had the balls to. "Good." Eyes turned. He leaned forward, fire behind his voice now. "Because we've spent too long waiting, hiding, preparing. This isn't extinction. This is our invitation to show them what hell actually looks like." Preparation turned into finality. All remaining governments dissolved into the directive, a single global war command. Not democracy, not politics, pure military control. Factories were retooled, not just for weapons, for replication. Earth couldn't match the fleet in size, so it went for numbers in chaos. Drones, smart mines, self-replicating orbital junk designed to clog, jam, and confuse. They called it the blood swarm. "We don't need to kill them," one AI strategist said. "We need to frustrate them until they wish they were dead." While the directive prepared Earth's last stand, Project Threshold came back online. But this time, not as a gate, as a spear. Elias had figured it out. The aliens didn't fear weapons. They feared unpredictability, and nothing in the galaxy was more unpredictable than a man with nothing left to lose. They chose him. His name was Travis Burke, former Spec Ops, dishonorably discharged for ignoring direct orders during a civilian evac op. The man who broke ranks to save 20 kids from a drone strike. The man who shot his own CO to do it. The kind of man the old world punished. The kind the new world needed. Darren met him in a steel corridor, far beneath Colorado soil, with nothing but 2 cups of black coffee between them. "You understand what this is?" Darren asked. Travis nodded. "Suicide mission." "No," Darren replied. "Worse. You're gonna live long enough to make them regret this war." They shook hands, the kind of handshake that doesn't need more words, the kind that seals revenge. Travis entered the threshold spear, a quantum-folded capsule, smaller than a coffin, but built like a devil's dagger. Inside it, a neural interface that let him control micro-drones with his thoughts, a bloodstream full of AI nanotoxins, and a single injection of Elias's final creation, a programmable grief trigger called Mercy Zero. "What's it do?" Travis asked. Elias looked him dead in the eyes. "It turns your pain into a virus they'll never forget." Earth launched him toward the fleet before it even reached Saturn. They didn't see him coming. Not because he was cloaked, but because he didn't show up on their scans as a ship. He showed up as a funeral signal, a memorial beacon, the kind sent out when a civilization died. It slipped through their formation without notice, until it detonated. Not in fire, not in plasma, but in memory. Every ship within 1,000 kilometers suddenly saw the same thing. A child screaming in a burning car, a woman holding her dead brother in a crater, a man burying 3 generations in a mass grave. Human suffering, compressed into data, injected into alien minds that had never known loss. Some ships went dark, others opened fire, on themselves. The fleet fractured before it even reached Earth. But that was only Phase 1. Phase 2? Travis Burke boarded one of the crippled ships. He moved like a ghost. Neural cloak activated, bleeding static into enemy perception. One by one, he planted viral nodes, not bombs, ideas. He fed their AI core the concept of revenge, of regret, of family. Concepts alien civilizations had abandoned eons ago. The ship screamed, then it turned and fired on the others. Back on Earth, Darren watched the carnage unfold through stolen eyes. They couldn't believe it. 1 man, 1 payload, and already 6 vessels lost. Elias stepped into the room, pale, shaking. "It's working." "No," Darren said. "He's working." They gave the order. Full swarm launch. The skies above Earth cracked as thousands of micro-drones flooded upward, some no bigger than a coin, some the size of a motorcycle, all of them carrying the same signature. "We are the consequence." The alien fleet reeled, not from damage, from confusion. They had never fought like this. There were no fronts, no formations, no rules of engagement, just an enemy that refused to die, and worse, refused to fight fair. As the final wave of blood-swarm drones reached the command carrier, a message was delivered, this time not in words, not in screams, just a mirror. It showed the faces of the galactic convocation. Then behind them, the faces of all the civilizations they had erased. And one phrase burned in red beneath it. "Your time is over." They called for retreat. Not because they were defeated, but because, for the first time in galactic history, they were afraid. Afraid of what would happen if they kept pushing. Because Earth didn't want to win. Earth wanted to make a point, and now it had. But the victory wasn't clean. Travis never came back. His last transmission was 2 words. "All clear." Then silence. His capsule detonated inside the command carrier's neural core. They didn't recover the pieces, but in every alien database, across every surviving ship, one image remained corrupted beyond repair. A man's face, bleeding, smiling, unbroken. Earth stood alone again, but not as prey, as legend. The galaxy wouldn't forget what it saw, not because it couldn't, but because Earth had made sure it wouldn't. They didn't send another fleet. Not after what happened to the 47. Not after Travis Burke boarded the command vessel and turned it into a floating tomb of madness and memory. Not after the blood swarm blocked out half the stars. Instead, the convocation went dark. No signals, no threats, no diplomacy, just quiet. And that was worse than anything else. Because Darren knew what silence meant in war. It meant they weren't finished. They were rethinking, plotting. The Council had voted for extermination and failed. Now the galaxy would choose a new weapon, something subtle, something Earth wasn't ready for. 2 weeks passed. Skies were calm. Earth's defense system stayed primed, but nothing came. Drones patrolled low orbit. Project Threshold remained online, armed and humming. People tried to return to life. But life wasn't what it used to be. The world had changed. Kids didn't go to school to learn math. They learned signal tracking and EMP defense. Farmers carried rifles over their shoulders while inspecting crops. Construction workers now built bunkers alongside buildings. And on every street corner, men talked in low voices about the man in the spear, Travis Burke. A dead legend. Living in rumors. Some said he survived. Some said he'd been taken. Others claimed they'd heard his voice on empty channels at night. Just breathing, just watching. Darren didn't believe in ghosts, but he believed in unfinished business, and he knew they would come again. Just not with ships. They would come from the inside. It started in Jakarta, a riot sparked by a news broadcast, except no one could agree on what the broadcast actually said. Some said it announced Earth's surrender. Others claimed it showed Travis alive, working with the enemy. Most didn't even remember the language it was in. It wasn't until 3 days later that Elias cracked the signal. "It's not a message," he said, hunched over the data feed. "It's a meme weapon." Darren blinked. "You mean a joke?" "No, I mean an idea engineered to spread like disease. It bypasses logic, it hits the limbic system, makes people react before they even understand what they're reacting to. A beat." "They're not attacking our bodies," Elias said grimly. "They're going after our unity." They called it the Fracture Protocol. It started slow. Conspiracy theories lit up the net like wildfire. Some claimed the directive was lying, that Earth had actually surrendered, and the war was faked. Others said Elias was an alien. A few even believed that the blood swarm wasn't a defense, but a cage built to keep Earth in. Within 2 weeks, Earth's global comms were a dumpster fire. Cities that once stood together during the invasion now blamed each other. China accused the U.S. of stealing alien tech. The U.S. accused Russia of sabotaging Project Threshold. Africa, once united under the Solar Defense Pact, fractured into warlord zones again. It was working. The meme weapon. Because humans weren't built for peace after trauma. They were looking for someone to blame. Elias worked non-stop, trying to isolate the source. "These ideas, they're not just viral," he said, bloodshot eyes staring at a neural map of the population. "They're self-evolving. Every time we delete one, 3 more pop up." Darren watched, silent, then finally said, "So we fight fire with fire." They rebooted Shepard, not the full protocol, just the echo core, the part that could create signals engineered to inject emotion. Except this time, instead of weaponizing pain, they weaponized truth. They created a new signal, clean, sharp, direct. It pulsed through every known frequency with a single unified message. We are not broken, we are blood. We are Earth, accompanied by footage of Travis Burke walking into the spear with fire behind him. A child in Uganda holding a shattered alien drone like a trophy. Miners in Kazakhstan welding a defense satellite by hand while singing in the cold. Real moments, real unity. No lies, just a reminder. The meme war hit resistance, and for the first time in days, it slowed. But it wasn't over, because a deeper betrayal was about to hit. 3 weeks after the signal stabilized, a convoy carrying nuclear cores to Threshold Command vanished in northern Canada. The drones escorting it went dark. The tracking devices were found melted into the snow. And in the middle of the wreckage, a sigil, not alien, human, an old mark, a black snake wrapped around a gear. Elias went pale when he saw it. No, it can't be, Darren growled. What? He turned the image sideways. A cold, simple word emerged. Covenant. Covenant wasn't a myth, but it should have been. Decades ago, they were a ghost unit, scientists and soldiers who believed humanity's evolution would come through assimilation, not resistance. They believed the galaxy wasn't something to fight. It was something to join, even if it meant selling Earth's soul. They've been quiet since '91, Elias muttered. We thought they disbanded after New Delhi. They didn't, Darren said. They just went dark. And now they were back, and they'd stolen nuclear-grade alien-enhanced cores. Why now? Elias asked. Darren looked at him, stone-eyed. Because they think Earth can't win another fight, and they'd rather kneel before the galaxy than bleed for this planet. It wasn't just an ideological war now, it was a civil one. Covenant launched attacks on threshold hubs, power plants, memory banks, anywhere that held the tools Earth needed to stay in the fight. They didn't want to destroy Earth. They wanted to offer it up, like a prize. They're planning a signal, Elias realized. They're going to contact the convocation and offer Earth surrender in exchange for a seat at the table. Darren didn't hesitate. Find them. It took 5 days and 3 dead informants, but they traced the signal prep to an abandoned radar complex in Alaska. Darren led the strike team himself. He didn't wear rank. He didn't bring generals. Just a rifle, a knife, and a team of 5 hard bastards who didn't ask questions. They hit the complex at Oro 3 Onro. The Covenant fought like ghosts, silent, precise, cold. But Earth didn't raise weak men anymore. When the dust settled, Darren stood over the body of the signal commander, a woman named Dr. Kara Wint, former NASA communications engineer, Covenant turncoat. She smiled through bloody teeth. They'll come again, she whispered, and you'll wish we had surrendered. Darren didn't blink. He just pulled the trigger. Back at Central Command, Elias reprogrammed the stolen signal and sent it himself. We're not for sale. We're not for peace. We're for blood. The galaxy received it, and this time, the convocation didn't respond, but something older did. A new transmission hit Earth 3 days later. Short, rough, primitive, but clear. We saw what you did to them. We want in. Coordinates followed. An asteroid field in the Nerith sector. No known civilizations, no convocation presence, but buried in the signal signature was something Elias hadn't expected. An Earth code, very old, Soviet era, a cosmonaut beacon from a mission that never made it back. And one word, brotherhood. The signal came from a dead corner of the galaxy, Nerith sector, an asteroid belt orbiting a collapsed star that hadn't shown signs of intelligent life in recorded memory. But the message was unmistakably human, laced with an old Soviet-era encryption buried deep in a dead format no modern system should have been able to decode. Elias cracked it by hand. 3 hours of cross-referencing tape logs and pulse compression revealed one phrase that made everyone in the command bunker go silent. Project Iron Seed operational. Brotherhood endures. Darren leaned forward, knuckles whitening against the metal table. That's not a ghost signal, he said. That's a call sign. Elias looked up. Someone made it out there. And now they want us to follow. The old reports came out of the archives like bones from a shallow grave. Project Iron Seed was never supposed to be real. Cold War-era contingency plan. The Soviets designed it as a long-range generational colonization experiment. One ship, one crew, no return. The objective? Plant a human seed beyond reach, outrun extinction, avoid Earth's self-destruction, succeed in silence. The US had its own version, Project Horizon Black, but it never launched. Only Iron Seed did. Or at least, that's what the record said. But no one ever heard back. Until now. Darren stood in front of the holomap as the Nerith sector pulsed in red. "We sent a scout," said one of the officers. "We can't afford to throw lives into a trap." Elias was already shaking his head. No drones getting through that belt. Radiation still wild from the dead star. AI systems go blind. Only way through is analog. "You're telling me we have to fly it manual?" Elias looked at Darren. "I'm telling you we need someone insane enough to try." It didn't take long to find him. Commander Ronan Graves, ex-UN Orbital Fleet, former ace pilot, dishonorably discharged after punching a superior officer for authorizing a drone strike too close to a civilian evac corridor. 5 years off-grid, living in a scavenger dome off the coast of Newfoundland, running black market flight simulators and drinking himself toward extinction. They found him arm wrestling a mech arm in a rusted-out bar. Darren gave him one sentence. "We found something. Human." Ronan finished his drink. "Let me guess," he said, wiping his mouth. "You want me to fly into a stellar graveyard in a radiation bath, in a ship that barely qualifies as space-worthy, with no backup and no confirmation anyone's even alive on the other end?" Darren didn't flinch. "Exactly," Ronan smirked. "Good, I'm bored." They called the ship the Hollow Vow, not military, not directive issued. It was a repurposed mining freighter, small, tough, built to survive asteroid pressure and built entirely analog on Elias's insistence. No advanced AI, no satellite beacons, just oxygen, shielding, and enough iron plating to take a beating from hell itself. Ronan loaded it himself. 2 weeks of supplies, 1 railgun, 1 backup nuke, and a flight stick that responded to human hands, not machines. "This thing drives like a drunk cow," he muttered. Elias handed him a thumb drive. "Upload this when you get close. It's a handshake protocol. If they're out there, it'll tell them we're still the same species." Ronan took it, looked Elias in the eye. "You sure they're still human?" Elias didn't answer. The launch was quiet. No fanfare, no press, just a cold countdown and a fiery blast through clouds too used to war. The Hollow Vow vanished into the stars. Destination: Nerith 6, the 3rd largest body in the dead belt, and the origin point of the beacon. ETA, 8 days. The trip wasn't smooth. The radiation got worse by day 3. Shields buckled. Systems glitched. Ronan switched to manual twice when auto-stabilizers started mistaking gravity wells for collision threats. By day 5, comms dropped completely. He was alone. No voices, no signals, just the hum of a dying star beyond the hull and the whisper of static at the edge of his mind. And on day 7, he saw it. The station. It wasn't a ship anymore, not really. It had grown. Metal had fused with asteroid rock. Towers had been carved from ice and alloy. Lights pulsed like a heartbeat across its surface. Alive. But human? He wasn't sure. Ronan approached slow. Engines dead. Only drift. The moment he passed the outer threshold, the Hollow Vow lit up with a single message on every screen. "We endure." And then the airlock opened, without command, without force, an invitation. He stepped out, rifle on his back, helmet sealed, and saw them. Figures, human, pale, scarred. Their uniforms were Soviet-era, patched with newer tech, eyes sunken but sharp. They didn't speak. They bowed and led him deeper. The heart of the station was a chamber lined with wires and pulse veins that hummed with electricity, and at the center, a chair, occupied, an old man, eyes white, skin gray but smiling. "You are late," he said in broken English. "I'm early," Ronan replied. "Everyone else is dead." The old man chuckled. "Not everyone." He tapped his temple, and then the walls lit up. Footage, recordings, of Earth, modern Earth, Blood Swarm, Travis Burke, the Convocation, everything. "We watched. We survived. We prepared." "For what?" Ronan asked. The old man's smile faded. "For the fire after the storm." Back on Earth, Elias was tracking the Hollow Vow's systems through a dirty back channel tethered to a long-range subspace burst. The ship was still alive. Ronan was still alive. But the data coming through? It didn't make sense. "The station's broadcasting in our language," he told Darren. "But the style, it's not Cold War anymore. It's evolved. It's tribal." He paused. "They've gone feral." Meanwhile, Ronan stood in a room full of tech that looked both primitive and impossibly advanced. One of the Brotherhood, a younger woman with an accent so thick it sounded artificial, handed him a sphere. "Memory core," she said. "Of what?" "Our rebirth." He plugged it into his visor. What he saw nearly dropped him to his knees. Genetic modification. Cognitive evolution. The Brotherhood had used alien scraps, old war wreckage from past civilizations, to evolve. They weren't purely human anymore. Not alien, not machine, just adapted. "We learned how to beat the galaxy," the woman said softly. "Not with ships, not with numbers, but with resilience. Pain became code. Grief became power." She leaned in close. "You think Earth won the war?" Ronan stayed silent. She smiled, but there was no joy in it. "You woke the next one." The Brotherhood wasn't offering alliance. They were offering direction, a new path, a human-only frontier, separate from the Convocation, from Earth, from everything. "You've outgrown your chains," the old man told him. "Now burn them. Let Earth die. Let us rise." Ronan stared, and then said one word. "No." The gunfire started instantly. He fought through corridors of blood and shadows. The Hollow Vow was waiting, powered up, engine primed. He took off under fire, burst through the field with a cracked hull and a bleeding side. But he made it out, and behind him, the Brotherhood didn't follow. They didn't need to, because the message had been sent. Across frequencies only Earth could understand. Your blood is not your own anymore. Choose, join, or burn. Ronan made it back. Barely. The Hollow Vow slammed into Earth's upper orbit like a wounded bird, half its hull missing, scorched by radiation, bleeding sparks like it had flown through hell. Rescue crews cut him out with blowtorches. He came out limping, coughing blood, face pale, but eyes clear. "Talk," Darren said before the medics could even wipe the blood from Ronan's mouth. Ronan spat, wiped his chin. "They're not just survivors," he said. "They're a religion now." The Brotherhood wasn't a colony. It was a philosophy, a doctrine forged in isolation, survival, and evolution. They believed Earth was obsolete, a decaying relic of what humanity used to be. Compassion, emotion, memory, all vulnerabilities in their eyes. They had shed them like skin. They had become something new, post-human. No more nations, no more family, just blood and purpose. They weren't coming back to Earth. They were coming to replace it. Darren stood before the directive's emergency council. Generals, scientists, strategists. No politicians left. They'd either fled, died, or been turned into bureaucratic fossils during the war. "They've made contact," Darren said, "and they've issued a choice. A hologram lit up beside him, the Brotherhood's message, intercepted through deep-range quantum bleed. Shed the weakness, join the new form, Humanity 2.0. Then a timer. 6 days. 6 days until what? One commander asked. Ronan answered, until they arrive. They'd built their own fleet, not massive like the Convocations, but elegant, precise, smaller ships, sleeker. Designed for surgical domination, not annihilation, not to burn cities, but to cut out the rot, people, culture, identity. They didn't want Earth dead. They wanted it emptied and rebuilt. From the DNA up. Elias sat alone in his lab that night, staring at the Brotherhood's message over and over. His hands shook. Not from fear, from recognition. He'd known this was possible, maybe even inevitable. But it didn't make it easier to watch. We taught them too well, he muttered. We taught them how to survive pain, but we forgot to teach them how to carry it. He stood and pulled out a drive from the back of a locked safe. A piece of tech he'd sworn never to use. Project Aletheia, the final ghost. Truth in its rawest, most unforgiving form. Memories. The ones the Brotherhood had cut out of themselves to become something more. He turned to Darren. If we can make them feel again, we win. Darren stared hard. And if we can't? Elias didn't blink. Then we bury them. The Brotherhood arrived on day 5. Silent ships dropped into Earth's atmosphere, hovering like titanic surgeons over key cities. Tokyo, Cairo, Berlin, Seattle, Kinshasa, São Paulo. They didn't attack. They broadcasted. Sonic pulses. Not loud, but deep. Every man and woman on Earth felt it in their bones, a call to ascend, to let go of grief, shame, anger, guilt, everything that made them human. Some broke, some welcomed it. Entire cults knelt in the streets, eyes blank, waiting for the evolution. They were taken first, peacefully, gone in seconds, absorbed into the Brotherhood ships, reprogrammed, reborn. Darren issued Order Midnight, global counter-ops. Kill anything attempting forced conversion. But it wasn't that easy. The Brotherhood didn't come with guns. They came with empathy turned into code, psychological warfare that made soldiers freeze, cry, or turn on their own squads without a shot being fired. You can't shoot an idea, Elias said, but maybe you can remind people what it costs. They built the device in 2 hours. Project Aletheia. It wasn't a bomb. It was a neural broadcast, a reverse frequency designed to inject suppressed memory. Elias loaded it with the worst parts of humanity's history. Children walking over broken glass in Dresden. Mothers burning in Hiroshima. Fathers shot in the back in Rwanda. Men holding their dying friends in trenches they'd dug with their hands, not to terrify, but to ground, to remind. To hurt with purpose, they launched it globally, and it worked. Across the world, the Brotherhood's grip slipped. People screamed, wept, collapsed, but they remembered who they were, what it meant to fight, what it meant to feel, even if it hurt. In Kinshasa, a 10-year-old boy looked up at a conversion drone, tears on his cheeks, and threw a rock. It shattered the drone's lens. In Berlin, an old woman recited her husband's dying words. Not in rage, but in defiance, and the drone above her crashed. The Brotherhood's code cracked, not all of it, but enough. They responded the only way they knew how, with war. Day 6, 03 GMT. The Brotherhood deployed their hunter teams, human-altered strike units with enhanced reflexes, dead nerves, and emotion suppression implants. No mercy, no pain, no hesitation. They cut through cities like scalpels through meat. But then something happened they didn't expect. Humanity adapted, the same way the Brotherhood had once done. But this time, not through silence, through rage. Bloodswarm returned. The line came back online. Old soldiers came out of retirement, arm in arm with ex-cons and ex-enemies. Riots turned into resistance cells. Street gangs joined hands with police. The world didn't unify under peace. It unified under wrath. Darren led the charge in Seattle. Ronan flew the hollow vow like a madman, low orbit strafing a Brotherhood transport ship using scavenged railguns bolted to the side. Elias stayed in Central Command, overriding every satellite with memory-triggered broadcasts of human loss and triumph. And in the chaos, Earth found something the Brotherhood had lost: grit. Pain didn't weaken humanity, it made it meaner. And when the Brotherhood's final ship descended into the Greenland sector to destroy Central Command, they were met with a wall, not of steel, of people, armed, united, and smiling through blood. Darren climbed the wreckage of the last downed Brotherhood pod with a busted shoulder and smoke in his lungs. Inside, a figure waited. The leader. Pale, tall, skin like porcelain, eyes gray like ash. "You could have ascended," the figure whispered. Darren spat on the floor. "You fell. Pain makes you weak." "No," Darren growled. "It makes us real." And then, without another word, he raised his rifle. The last shot of the war echoed through the tundra like a thunderclap. After that, they were gone. No transmissions, no more ships, no more conversion. Just silence. But not the terrifying kind from before, the respectful kind. Earth had bled for it, paid in ash and memory, but it had won, not through firepower, not through technology, but through one brutal, universal truth. Humanity doesn't evolve by cutting off its scars. It evolves by carrying them, and still standing. In the months that followed, Earth rebuilt. Slow, painful, but honest. There were no monuments for Travis Burke, Ronan Graves, or Elias Morrow. They didn't want statues. They wanted silence, memory, a promise that next time, Earth wouldn't be surprised. Darren stood alone on a mountain ridge, watching the stars. No uniform, just the man he'd become. He lit a cigarette and stared at the sky where it had all started, and whispered one last truth into the dark. We are not the strongest. We are not the smartest. But if you come for us again, you'd better not miss.